Hi, Ray Smith. Thanks for watching these videos. We're going to look at some ways of teaching the blues to young students. This can easily be the beginning. Some people feel it's better to start with a modal tune. Some people like the blues better. Both have strengths. I'm going to start with the blues. I think the biggest reason people don't want to start with the blues, they don't want the kids to get stuck only being able to play the blues scale. But that's only if we don't teach them what else to do, more to do. So I'm going to show you a sequence that I might use with young students. You start with a very basic blues progression, and this is what I usually do with the students by ear. I'm going to turn on a play along here. The Jamie Aebersold play alongs are fantastic, and I would highly recommend them. This is on volume 54. And I'm just going to demonstrate a simple thing I do by ear. A simple little tune, same phrase repeated 4 times in a row. I usually just then point out that the tune itself is a scale. It's what we call a minor pentatonic scale. The minor pentatonic scale is a 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7. And then the root. I often do call and response with the kids. I'll play for 2 measures, then I'll ask them to repeat that idea, and then I'll play 2 more bars and they repeat the idea. And I'll do some call and response to give them some ideas about how they might use those notes to play their own melodies. Maybe something like this, starting simple. Then the kids play it, and kids repeat it. I wouldn't usually get that hard that fast. I'd probably go simpler for a while. Boo doo da da dee doo da doo wow. Ba dee do da da da. Played that one too long. You get the idea. I'll do some call and response, just repeat ideas so the kids have an idea, some ideas of what to do with this. Then we can just string those ideas together. Anyway, you get the idea that we could get the kids as a class playing these things. Like the whole class can repeat this back. I'll play an idea, the class repeats it back, or play an idea, the kids repeat it back. I think call and response is a good way to help the students understand how to use a few notes to create melodies by using rhythm, reordering the notes, and so on. Now, I would use this for another thing that comes up in a few more pages in the book. This bebop scale, and I would use the bebop scale to kind of get them into more notes that they can play. The bebop scale is a dominant scale or a Mixolydian scale. In other words, it's like a major scale with a flat 7, which would be this. But if I play it that way, I end up with the wrong number of notes in a major and the wrong notes in the spread places. So if I I just play the Mixolydian scale down in the major, I'm going to end up with the wrong notes in the stressed positions and not enough notes to fill up the bar. Check this out. Those are my best target notes. My chord notes are my best target notes. Now, by putting in one extra note, I'm not only going to have all the right notes fall in the right positions, strong positions, but I'm also going to be able to fill up the major in terms of eighth notes. The regular Mixolydian scale is one note short. So check this out. I'm putting in a major 7 and a flat 7. What notes are there in the strong position now are all the target notes, you see. Plus, it fills up the major better. It's going to help me play the right notes in the right places. So the bebop scale, super valuable. On those majors, I can't do the whole pattern because I only have one major. So. So I have the kids trace the scale down in each of the majors. 2 majors I can play the whole pattern, 1 major I can only play part of the pattern. So I'm going to do this in harmonic rhythm with the tune, of course. This gives me some intuition about how the harmonies are moving. Something that I can do with the pentatonic that I can add one more note to it and make a blues scale out of it. It's basically the minor pentatonic scale with one more note, the flat 5. So now the pattern is 1, flat 3, 4, flat 5, regular 5, and then the flat 7 in the octave. This is what we call the blues scale. It's not the only blues scale, but I can do similar call and response patterns with the kids. Play 2 bars, let them play 2 bars. Boo ba boo ba da boo ba doo ah. So So this is one way that I could get the kids playing what I call horizontal approach to the tune. Meaning that I'm not making my materials that I'm playing based on chord progressions or vertical structures. I'm basing on horizontal structure, such as the key of the piece. I'm basing my pentatonic scale or my blues scale on the key of the piece. So I want to move the kids into what I call vertical playing. Vertical playing is when I am basing what I'm playing on those vertical structures. The blues we've just been using is a very basic blues. Stays on the 1 chord for 4 measures, then goes to the 4 chord for 2 measures, 1 chord for 2 measures, 5 1 measure, 4 1 measure, and 1 2 measures. That's probably the most basic progression that we ever use these days. In fact, we rarely play it quite that basic. I'm going to outline these with you.
1 2 3.
1 chord. Stays here for 4 measures. Goes to the 4 chord right here for 2 measures. Back to the 1 chord for 2 measures. 5 chord, 4 chord, 1 chord. top. We're repeating that over again. It just repeats again and again. I'm going to put on a blues that has a little more substitution added into that chord progression. I'm going to put on a blues that's not quite so simple. When we begin to play more vertically on the blues, that means that I've got to make the notes change when the chords change. This is fairly simple on the blues, and let's start this way.
One.
Okay, I'm going to play the notes that have to move by half step
One,
on
two,
the blues progression.
3, 4.
I also have another level of things. I can combine these two levels this way. Now I'm going to do this. Now what I've done is I've just added a few notes and rhythms to make it more interesting than just playing whole notes. But we can do the same kind of thing that we do with we're actually still incorporating all those same notes as the whole notes. I'm just putting some common tones around it to make it a little more interesting for the kids. This is what I call the framework of the blues. I'm going to have them do it until they're sick of it, until it's just totally ingrained in every cell in their brain. Here it is again. Kids play this as a class. They can play it over and over and over again. Then you can have the class play it while each person solos on it. What do I do to solo? I take those same notes and just put some rhythms in. I keep pretty simple at first. I might do something like this where I just add a few more notes around it, maybe do some different rhythms. So on this very simple blues, we can get the kids actually improvising around the right notes to go with the chorus when the chorus change. We call these notes that have to change by half-step guide tones. And so we're actually forming a framework of guide tones for the blues with the framework that I've given you. So now here's another version of just playing around with those notes. Now what I'm doing here is I'm combining now notes of the blues scale with the minor pentatonic scale with the notes of the bebop scale or the Mixolydian scale. We have all these materials that are available to us to create with. So I demonstrated how I'm adding some of the blues scale notes, but then still making the changes happen that have to go by half step. So we can mix up all the materials ultimately. So let me turn this off. Just to recap then on the blues, I would start the kids with a simple minor pentatonic scale. Do call and response, get ideas going with those notes. There's only 5 notes. The good news is you cannot play any wrong notes. If you're playing this way, there are no wrong notes. And the other good news is that I can do the same thing with the blues scale. When I add that one extra note, again, there are no wrong notes. Every note works on every chord. It doesn't matter what chords are played. You can blanket what I call horizontal playing or blanketing with those chords, those scales, I should say. Then I want the kids to get into actually playing the blues progression. So then we look at the notes, what the progression is, and then we have to look at what notes have to change by half step. It's always half steps that make the world go around. So we're always looking for the notes that change by half step. As we get the notes that will change by half step through the progression defined, then we've created the guide tones, and then I will kind of flush around that to create a framework for a tune. I can do this with any tune. I've done it with many tunes. This is the one I'd use for the blues. And so then we add the extra notes around it. We do it a lot until we really have that ingrained. Then you can have part of the class play that while each student solos. And we get into the idea of soloing. Again, this could be call and response, but to get into the idea of soloing by now playing more vertically, I've got to make the changes. When the changes happen, the notes that have to change, I've got to make that happen in my playing by choosing the correct notes. But when I do that, then I've got, I'm on my way to really improvising. And at that point, I want them to be disciplined to just playing that way with the notes that have to change. Then I would add in bebop scale type considerations, let them learn the bebop scale to go with those notes. The bebop scales do have to change when the chords change. I should make that even more plain that that is not necessary with the pentatonic scale or the blues scale. We do not want to change when the chords change to a different blues scale. We play the same blues scale based on the key of the piece for the entire progression, or the same minor pentatonic scale for the entire progression. With the bebop scale, then that's going to change when the chords change. And I'll run them through that. And then I will add the idea that we can play vertically. We can use the notes that we have to use the guide tones, and we can use the notes from the bebop scale. But I can also add in notes from the minor pentatonic scale or notes from the blues scale, and I can do that freely and then go back into where I was in the progression. So that's one way of getting some younger students. And I build this step by step, of course. But this is one way to get the kids playing a blues. So it's also one way to start with the whole concept of improvisation with the kids. So I'll leave you with that for now, and then we'll come back to some other ideas. Thanks.